F1 and ITV, sponsored by LG.
There's 9 100s in it then as Montoya goes into the final two corners. This is where Raikkonen slid. Was that decisive? Oh, it's a massive slide for Montoya. He's biffed it into the barriers and he's thrown it all away.
A monster mistake that visibly pained boss Ron Dennis. Montoya spins from a possible pole to the back. Raikkonen's fastest, but Hockenheim is his bogey track. He's never finished here. Jenson Button loves the place. He starts ahead of the World Championship leader Fernando Alonso. His aim is simple: don't let the Finn fly away. ITV Sport welcomes you to Hockenheim for the 12th round of the championship, the German Grand Prix.
Hello there, good afternoon from the pit lane. We normally fry at this Grand Prix, but throughout this weekend it's been a lot cooler than normal. The current temperature around 25 degrees, and I've just seen the first few drops of rain coming down as well. 8 races to go then. Fernando Alonso has led the championship since the second Grand Prix in Malaysia back in March. It really is looking very good for the Spaniard. But he knows those McLaren Mercedes are really in a class of their own at the moment. Raikkonen has to recover a 26-point deficit. Michael Schumacher has clawed his way up to third. Schumi with massive and loyal support in these parts. Barrichello neck and neck with Trulli. Then British Grand Prix winner Montoya. Fisichella and the German Heidfeld both on 25 above Ralf Schumacher, Hockenheim winner back in 2001, and Webber in the improving Williams BMW. First up then, your qualifying report with race commentators Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Well, this was set up to be one of the most exciting qualifying sessions of the season so far, for several reasons really, Martin. First of all, Montoya back on form with McLaren, but secondly, for once, all the big names were going late in the qualifying hour, so there were no excuses for them really.
Yes, and despite lots of forecasts of rain, the weather was actually pretty consistent, except the track temperature rose quite a lot. Now, those drivers with a well-balanced car suddenly found they had bundles of oversteer. Those with an understeer car were actually quite happy with their balance. Let's take a look.
Robert Dornbos becomes the 6th driver to make his Grand Prix debut this season, driving an improved Minardi. He and Christian Albers were comprehensively faster than the Jordans. 16th and 17th their award. Red Bull Racing looked good for top 10 on the grid. David Coulthard made a lot of changes to the weight distribution of the car, but a couple of small mistakes lost him a few tenths. He wound up 11th behind teammate Christian Klien. Michael Schumacher has not had a pole this season and he looked a long way off it here. Ferrari is still short on grip. A new aero package has improved the balance of the car, but the tyres don't like it the more rubber goes down on the track. Schumacher went for a lighter fuel load and bagged 5th, while Barrichello is 15th.
It was a clean, nice lap. Not much to complain about that. I think we should look forward, but there is not much to look forward. There's probably Jenson we can fight. The rest I doubt we can.
Well, Jenson Button had a great lap, much more aggressive than usual, a little too aggressive through turn 12 when the car snapped out, but it was good enough for a front row start slot for the second race in a row.
Had a little bit too much oversteer in the car, had a couple of moments, but it was good fun, and I kept my foot in, and to be on the front row again is great. But our aim in the race is to just stay as close as we can to the Renaults and the McLarens.
Kimi Raikkonen faced a stiff challenge here from his own teammate Juan Pablo Montoya. It was always going to be very close between these two. Raikkonen knew it. He attacked the lap with gusto and controlled this slide absolutely beautifully through turn 16. He snatched provisional pole position and really gave Fernando Alonso something to think about. The McLaren is working beautifully here, and what about this for car control?
Hopefully it keeps going like this. You never know what happens in a race, but I think so we have a very good race car, and we seems to be quick all the time, so as long as everything works well, we should be okay.
Renault don't have the single lap qualifying pace of McLaren, but there's little to choose between them on race pace. Alonso knew that, and he did his own thing on strategy here. He makes so few mistakes and delivers a lap just short of Jenson Button's to put him third on the grid in sight of Raikkonen. But with a 26-point cushion in the World Championship over the Finn, he can afford to play the percentage game this afternoon.
Hopefully I can overtake Jenson, which is my priority. And then for sure for the podium finishes, Jenson will be there.
Montoya was on a real high going into qualifying, looking to snatch pole away from his teammate. Like Raikkonen, he got oversteer. Unlike Raikkonen, he couldn't control it. A terrible mistake for the Colombian that's costing McLaren in both championships. He cannot play a role for his teammate today.
Well, you know, we got the time on the dash, and I thought, oh, this is looking good, and just to make sure good exit out last corner. As soon as I lifted, rear end just stepped out and I couldn't get it.
Sometimes between triumph and disaster there can be just the slenderest of margins. Well, a pretty expensive mistake there for Montoya on a number of levels, really. I mean, he can't take points out of Alonso, which Kimi Raikkonen would dearly love him to do here today. He's not going to contribute much to McLaren's pot either, so expensive. But what's your view on it? Do you admire his competitive spirit, or do you think he's a clot?
Well, they had a car advantage at McLaren. Of course, the balance changed for them and nearly caught them both out. Raikkonen held on to it. Montoya couldn't, got too far up on the curb. But this is a disaster for the team because it'll take 2 or 3 races to wash out. He's got to come through the pack today to give himself half a chance with the qualifying slot for Hungary next weekend, where you just cannot pass in the race. So it could be as far away as Turkey before he's back up there helping Raikkonen out.
What is absolutely clear, though, at this time of the season is that McLaren and Renault have a significant performance advantage over everybody else, both in qualifying trim and in race trim. We've seen that on the long runs. Jenson Button, though, he's on their kind of coattails in a terrific battle, I think, this afternoon with Michael Schumacher and the rest to maybe try and nick a podium.
Yeah, there are definitely going to be 2 parts to this race this afternoon, but there was a standout performance from Jenson Button in qualifying. Let's take a look at the lap. Hockenheim for the German Grand Prix. 67 frantic laps, hopefully with lots of overtaking. It's just over 4.5 clicks per lap. That's 2.85 miles. Get ready for a masterclass in how to drive a Formula 1 car around Hockenheim. Button, BAR, 185 miles an hour, turn 1, 110 on the apex. Balance the car beautifully on the throttle, up to 165 before the heavy braking zone of turn 2. It's slow, kiss the curb on the inside. Listen to this. He just squeezes the throttle as if it's going through treacle. He doesn't get a hint of traction control. Up to 195 miles an hour, the gentle left-hand curve looking towards the hairpin. Massive braking, down at least 5 gears. He's been on all the right parts of the racetrack so far, and it's no change here. Straighten the car as soon as you can and nail the throttle pedal. An easy full throttle right-hander ahead of you. Nothing for Button to do apart from position the car on the right-hand side, ready for the left-hander of the Mercedes corner. Coax it further to the left-hand side. A hint of lift of the throttle through the right-hander, 120 miles an hour, up to 180, the unsighted stadium corner. It's tricky on the exit. That counts as a moment for Button on this lap. Hug the white line, that's perfect in the Sachs hairpin. Straighten up the piff-paff as much as you can, getting the car ready for the final 2 south curve corners. Superb, listen. Absolutely ready with the throttle, no more than needed, over the line, front row of the grid for Button. Great lap.
He goes so well here. We'll be looking at what might be happening to Jenson Button next season before the start of the German Grand Prix. It's still just spitting with rain here in the paddock, by the way. Now then, Tony, I want to talk about the man who's going to be starting on pole alongside Jenson Button, Kimi Raikkonen, who in the last couple of years has ended up in the same set of tyres.
It's a little bit like Canada. You could almost think it was Champions War. It could be forgiven for that because in 03, there was a slow-starting Rubens Barrichello off the line, and Kimi got caught. He was pushed out towards the grass mainly by Ralf Schumacher, and this is where he ended up, straight into that tyre wall. There you can see him going away in the first part of the Nord curve there, and again the following year chasing down Michael Schumacher in the lead. It was lap 14, the rear wing came off and he had a big accident in the same place. No downforce of that. He was very, very angry, hurling down the steering wheel. But he's failed to finish in 4 German Grand Prix.
Yeah, he was angry because he thought he could have caught Michael Schumacher here last year. But it's a super place for overtaking this one. Who knows, if we do get a bit of rain, it'll make it even better, won't it, Tony? And Alonso and Jenson Button had a real dice here last year.
I think Jenson Button showed everybody this time last year that he's a very, very accomplished racing driver. Those who doubted his overtaking ability when he came from 13th on the grid, and then he hunted down Fernando Alonso. Fernando in a slight bit of trouble towards the end of the race there, had something caught underneath the car, but nevertheless, Jenson was on fire, his best race so far.
We thought he came of age here last year. For a while he had to drive one-handed because he was literally getting strangled by his helmet strap.
Well, he was almost getting garroted, but the thing is that when you have a helmet that's loose and the air is pushing it up, if you imagine doing 180 miles an hour, the air is filling the helmet and it's trying to pull itself off your head at the same time strangling you. One hand on the helmet keeping it forced down, one hand on the steering wheel. It was real hero stuff. So there were plenty of stories after the race as well.
Okay, just finally, how big a problem is it for him at the start? He might get swallowed up like he was at Silverstone.
Well, he's already talked about it. You know how quick your car is off the line. He knows that Fernando Alonso is on the outside, the grippy part, in 3rd place behind him. He could get swallowed up. Let's just hope he can hold his own through to that first bend.
So he's up on the front row. A bit of a surprise down the back as well, Tony. Just chat us through the grid.
Kimi Raikkonen's 4th pole this year puts McLaren in the driving seat, but it's Button's 2nd front row on the trot. Alonso's just glad to be 3rd and on the clean side. The fleet Renault fills 2nd row with Fisico. Michael Schumacher 5th and targeting Button. Webber and Heidfeld 6th and 7th in the improving Williams. Takuma Sato's BAR Honda 8th. Trulli's Toyota had brake problems in 9th. Young Klein delighted to beat Red Bull teammate to 10th. DC, because he locked up at the hairpin. Ralf Schumacher 12th. Massa Sauber 13th. His teammate Villeneuve 14th. 15th Barrichello on harder Bridgestone tyres. He's only just ahead of the Dutch success of Minardi men. Albers 16th. Grand Prix debutant Dawn Boss 17th. They're ahead of the Jordans and birthday boy Montero, and Carter Cahan was last after aborting his lap. But hero to villain for McLaren, Montoya crashed.
So Juan Pablo Montoya starting right at the back of the grid. Not really ideal when your team is in the midst of a battle to win the championship. I'm joined now by Juan Pablo's boss, Ron Dennis. Ron, it must be quite difficult to forgive a mistake like that in a driver of Juan Pablo's experience.
Well, it is pretty unforgivable, but that's the only positive way to move forward in today's race. You know, the end of the day, we've got a quick car, probably the strongest car in the grid at the moment, and he's still statistically capable of getting up into the points, and that's what we've got to be focused on, not worrying about what happened and all the ifs and buts.
Obviously, you've got Kimi right up the front there, though. I mean, he's never actually finished this race, but you've got to be pretty confident of his chances today.
We're not confident of anything because it's Formula One, and it's a tough thing to win at, but he's obviously in the strongest place to start. We're expecting a little bit of rain, but it should dry out before the beginning of the race. But it could be interesting because we expect intermittent rain through the race, so it's going to be tactically quite difficult and a challenging race to win.
How much of a battle are you expecting from Alonso and even from Jenson Button?
Well, we don't think that they're fueled particularly long. Certainly Button's not. We are, I think, on the right strategy, the optimum strategy, and it's a question of if we've got it wrong, but I think we'll be quite a bit quicker, so hopefully we'll pull out a lead, and if we've got that cushion, then pretty much it'll cover any sort of manoeuvrings that Renault bring to bear on us.
Thanks, Ron.
They win together and they lose together. How big an error was that from Montoya, and should he have been more of a team player in qualifying?
Well, of course he should have been a team player, Jim, but he was thinking about himself. He was thinking about pole position for himself on the back of Silverstone. But the problem is he has compromised the team's position in terms of the Constructors' Championship. He said afterwards, I'm going to try and make amends and come through the field. But if it does stay dry, it's going to be very difficult. Remember, Kimi tried to come through the field from Silverstone at the back. He had problems with the aerodynamics. The aerodynamics are different this year. Can he do that? Will he be allowed to overtake by the aero?
We are deep in Schumi territory here. He says the Ferrari lacks performance. The fans are staying loyal. How do you see that Ferrari scenario?
Well, it's very difficult. He came here last year having won 10 Grand Prix, and he won his 3rd German Grand Prix. But they are very, very loyal fans indeed. They're not good time fans. You have to have the red shirt, the klaxon, and be able to moo, shoo me all night outside our window. But apart from that, they are genuinely loyal fans, and they're here rooting for him.
Every team in this paddock puts great store by the Constructors' Championship, and if we have a look at that, it does appear that their unprecedented 6 wins in a row, Ferrari I'm talking about, has come to a conclusion. McLaren, although Montoya has done them no favours, they believe they can haul in Renault at the top there, Tony.
Yeah, without the indiscretions of Juan Pablo Montoya, they could ostensibly do it. But, of course, it is a symbol of great technical achievement for the team, and it is something that all the team can join in. It's not just for the drivers. OK, Tony, thank you very much. It is the first time we've had the brollies out all year. I think Ted's going to do a spot of weather forecasting for us.
Well, not weather forecasting, Jim. This is actuality. It is raining down here, and, well, look at this. There's a little... slightly worried Jenson Button. He's just having a look with his engineer Tristram, and they're seeing what they're going to go to the grid with. I've just had a look at Takuma Sato's pit wall here, and he's just held up, his engineer has just held up a board saying T Sato wet. So they think they're going to go to the grid with wet tyres. And of course the Michelin guys, Jim, are the ones who have to worry, because they haven't tested their latest wet tyres since a Jerez test when they artificially wet the track about 4 months ago. So they have not run a wet tyre since then. They've got to worry. Of course, these guys over here, Ferrari, who run the Bridgestones, they are laughing. A properly wet race would absolutely sort their German Grand Prix. And you know all the ones about Michael Schumacher being the Weathermeister, the Regenmeister, the Weather Supremo. He could win this one. Anyway, just to fill you in on the rules, you know they're not allowed to change the tyres. Well, they can change from the one set of dry tyres to the wet tyres, but if it stops raining, then they have to go back to the original set of dry tyres they were on when it was dry at the beginning of the race.
Thanks very much indeed for that, Ted. It won't do much for Ferrari's state of mind, but I think it is now just about stopped raining, and it was only at best a bit of a drizzle anyway. And now we always try and improve your understanding of what can be a very complicated sport, and in the first of a brand new series, Martin Brundle now takes a detailed look at the structure of the modern Formula One car.
Why do Formula One cars tend to look the same? There's a standing paddock joke that if you painted them all white and put them in a line, the Formula One team bosses couldn't tell you which one was theirs. Well, hands up. When I'm commentating on a long camera shot, I can get them wrong too. And that's when they're all painted and stick it up. Over the decades, the profile and concept of the cars has changed. And from time to time, there have been some very radical designs. Here are just a few examples. In the 50s, the slippery front-engine cars were fast in a straight line, but were also heavy. Soon the cars were rear-engined and far more nimble. Next, the engine and gearbox would become stressed items and part of the monocoque space frame chassis, and looking far more purposeful. Tyre development continued at an unabated pace. A scary development were the high wings of the late 60s, which looked bizarre and often detached themselves with devastating effect, the first sign of significant aerodynamics. Tyrrell tried a six-wheeler with 4 fronts. March and Williams experimented with 4 rears. Next came the sensational skirted ground effect cars. They had so much grip, the drivers had to adjust their driving styles to new limits. The cars were fast but scarily inconsistent, and they were soon banned, as was the radical Brabham fan car, which tried to recreate the effect. Generally, they're all pretty similar now. First, the fundamentals. The car must have no more than 4 wheels and tyres, which have a maximum width and diameter restriction. Those 4 must be placed external to the bodywork when in plan view. Only 2 may be steered, and only 2 may be driven. The driver must face forward, and he cannot be enclosed or have his feet in front of the axle centre line. The fuel tank has to be between the back of the driver and the front of the engine. The safety cell, which we call the monocoque, is carefully defined in size, and there are 2 templates which must fit through certain parts of the cockpit area. The designer can choose the distance between the front and rear wheels, the wheelbase. Once that's been sorted out, all of the other dimensions are defined as a distance from a number of imaginary lines. That's the front and rear axle centre line, the floor or reference plane, and the centre line of the car. The total width or track of the suspension must not exceed 1.8 metres. And within the wheelbase, the bodywork must not exceed 1.4 metres. To simplify that, I'm going to create boxes to represent the numerous regulations which define the silhouette of the car. The red vertical shading represents the centre line of the car. The blue flat zone is technically the reference plane, but let's call it the floor. Sign up your driver, give him a fuel cell for a rucksack, and throw a few $100 million at the engine and gearbox departments. Now you can bolt on the rear suspension, drive shafts and wheels. We will then install a cooling system and, moving along the car, finally we need a front suspension and steering package. This gives us the rolling mechanical layout of a Formula 1 car. It doesn't look much until we add the skin or bodywork, which is mostly defined by the rules. The driver safety cell is shown in green and is the backbone of the car. The orange area must be kept clear for the driver. The blue triangle represents a maximum height of the bodywork, which must also be symmetrical. Now for the imaginary rule boxes I mentioned. These are the no bodywork zones, starting with the pink box under the front wing. In the oblong blue boxes, there must be no bodywork, but some suspension is allowed. In the purple and light green areas, again there must be no bodywork or aerodynamic parts other than the rear view mirrors. The critical dark green area in front of the rear wheels is kept clear to help control and reduce downforce. The 6 orange and yellow zones force the designers into a specific rear wing and underfloor shape and position. It's complicated and restrictive, but there's still plenty of nooks and crannies for the designers to apply their trade. Now let's remove those boxes to reveal the finished article. Painted in a single colour, this could be any of today's Formula 1 cars. Safety is a key factor in the look of the car too. For example, there must be a rollover bar just behind the driver's head. Most of the car will then be crash tested to rigorous levels. For example, the nose will be crammed into a wall and then twisted too. Inevitably, key areas like the side pods will need a certain amount of material to absorb the energy and will therefore look the same. So that's why Formula 1 cars tend to look so similar, but the beauty is in the exquisite detail where the designers and aerodynamicists use their skills and knowledge in the myriad of small areas where they do have some freedom. It seems, whatever the regulations, they have an effective and elegant solution to the problem.
And next weekend, during our coverage of the Hungarian Grand Prix, Martin will unravel the secrets of aerodynamics. You know, all the teams here along the paddock fight their own individual battles, and this has been a very significant weekend for Minardi, whose cars qualified ahead of the Jordans, an instant triumph for their new double Dutch formation.
Robert Doornbos has fitted pretty comfortably into Patrick Friesacker's seat at Minardi. The Dutchman, formerly third driver at Jordan, didn't even start racing until he was 17. Aided by aerodynamic improvements to the Minardi, he makes his debut for an impressive 17th on the grid.
Not bad. I'm in front of my ex-teammates, so that's quite good. I will say hello to them on the grid tomorrow, and yeah, look forward to a nice race, a new adventure.
His former team's qualifying quest wasn't quite so exciting. Narain Karthikeyan slipped up, then gave up on his qualifying lap. Thiago Monteiro, who set a new record for race finishes in his rookie season, has reliability worries.
We found a small difference from car to car, and it's not 100% exactly what it is, but with reliability we should be okay. We're not sufficiently worried to change any of the major parts of the car, so we should be okay.
Williams appears to be finally getting a grip on its Mark II car. Qualifying saw a dramatic improvement on the team's pace last time out at Silverstone.
We will see how the strategy pans out, but we're ahead of the people we want. Of course, we want to be further up, but ahead of the Red Bulls and a couple of Toyotas, obviously. So, you know, they're the guys who've got to try and race.
Two teams have broken ranks and signed up to a new Concord agreement. Jordan and Red Bull have joined Ferrari and inked their approval to the document which will govern the commercial side of Formula One from 2008. The remaining 7 are still holding out.
There's a lot of good work that is being done by the manufacturers and the teams, but they're coming to a point that they're deciding to vote on issues, and I felt it was right and appropriate that Red Bull declare their position for the future.
Meanwhile, Red Bull and the other 6 Michelin teams have had the guilty verdicts issued by the FIA following the US Grand Prix cancelled after presenting new photographic evidence to the sport's governing body. Relations between the teams and FIA boss Max Mosley, which had been at an all-time low, now appear to be on the mend.
Don't forget you can have your say. Email us at paddock@itv-f1.com. Why not hit on our website? That's itv.com/F1. Louise, all set for your questions on this week's Ask the Team. And she's back here now responding to an email about the drivers' eating habits on race day.
Alex Venus from Maidstone says while the fans are tucking into bratwurst and burgers, what food will Jenson Button eat to see him through the Grand Prix? Well, Phil Young is Jenson's sports therapist. What rocket fuel is on his menu today?
OK, about 8 o'clock in the morning he'll have a whole grain cereal with some soya milk, nice banana.
It's not that nice actually, it's a bit manky.
He likes it manky, it's easily digestible that way. Bit of orange juice. Then we go on to lunch about 2 hours before the race. Good mixture there, carbohydrates, proteins, good mixture, easily digestible again. Onto some fresh fruit, washed down with a bit of green tea, and obviously lots of water before the race mixed in with the sports drinks, that sort of thing.
And presumably you have the same healthy diet?
Well, I normally stick to fried breakfasts really, and burgers at the end.
Thanks, Phil.
Well, good for him, but he's not the racing driver, is he? As we see Ralf Schumacher going out. Mike, we're going to be hearing from you from the pit wall during the race, but what do you think, A, with the rain, and B, with the possibility of a first corner pile-up?
Well, I don't think there's going to be any rain. Our forecast said that it was going to stop raining about now and won't rain anymore. First corner, well, it can happen at any race, but I'm sure they'll be all right.
OK, thanks very much, Mike. Back to you, Jim.
And their forecast appears to be spot on. Toyota based not so far away in Cologne. How about that first corner, Tony? What are the problems there?
It's very, very difficult. It's been reprofiled slightly with the new circuit, but if you remember, Michael Schumacher about 4 years ago had a problem with his transmission. He was slow off the line and caused an almighty crash behind him. There's been so many incidents we saw earlier on from 03 with Kimi Räikkönen going off when Barrichello had a slow start. It's very, very tight. It's very exciting, very dramatic track. The lap is relatively short, and if the aerodynamics allow it, and this is what I'm fascinated to see, we should get some very good overtaking into the hairpin.
Let us hope so. Just over half an hour to go to the start of the German Grand Prix. It is competition time now. Reminder, we run one every racing weekend after the result from Silverstone. Watch very carefully if you fancy a fabulous trip next weekend to the 24-hour race at Spa.
Last week we gave you the chance to dress up like Mark Webber and Nick Heidfeld. 2 lucky winners get themselves a Williams shirt and a tour of the factory in Grove for knowing that Silverstone has hosted the most British Grand Prix. Well done, David Lake and Stephen Brindle. We've got another great competition for you now. You can win a trip to the Spa 24-hour race next weekend, courtesy of Aston Martin Racing. The winner and a guest will be treated to a first-class trip to Belgium on Eurostar, plus hospitality, accommodation, and of course those all-important grandstand seats to watch the race. To enter, just answer the following question. Which team was Damon Hill driving for when he won the Belgian Grand Prix in '98? Was it A, Ferrari, B, Williams, or C, Jordan? To enter by phone, call 0901 293 2020 or text F1 followed by your answer, A, B or C, to 63337. Calls and texts will cost you £1 plus a standard network charge. Mobile rates vary, and we need your answer by midday on Wednesday.
And the best of luck to you all. Now, we are hoping for great things from Jenson Button. He is up front alongside pole sitter Kimi Räikkönen. Again, though, Button's future is unclear. BAR want him to stay. Williams insist they have a cast-iron contract to employ him next season. Ted can bring you right up to date.
It's a real head-scratcher deciding who to drive for. This time last year, Jenson Button decided he'd had enough of BAR and, despite a run of good results, wanted to leave and join Williams. The lawyers got involved and BAR kept him for this season. but Jenson was clear about his future.
I want to be challenging for the World Championship. That is my aim, and I think Williams is the team. Williams is the team I'm going to do it with, and Williams is the team that give me that possibility.
Jenson's Williams contract says that the only way BAR can keep him was if they score more than 75% of the points of the World Championship leaders by the end of August. That's not going to happen. At the moment, BAR have just under 9%, and this weekend Button said the car just isn't quick enough to win. But Williams are currently underperforming. Are they a good team to go to right now? We asked Williams drivers past and present.
Williams hasn't been good for the last 7 years. I mean, that has been the reason why I left, basically, because I believe that Williams is not the team for the future. Having said that, if Frank and Patrick at one stage decide to maybe get the right people on board and to change a few things around and whatever, then that might be successful again.
He committed for the team 2 years ago. It's the same way when I committed to McLaren. I committed to McLaren, and whether they're going to be quick or not, I was going to come here because that's what I wanted to do, and that's why Jenson made the same choice. Nobody asked him, you have to sign that contract. It was his choice. For a surprise of him, the team didn't perform.
Well, if it's up to Jenson, then he's lapped me in the last 2 races. So it's I don't know what how excited about he is still, if he still is wants to come to Williams. But obviously it's his decision, and but I'd say the chances are quite low, unfortunately.
So whose grass is greener? Well, Honda have committed to BAR long term. That includes a works engine, and the whole team worships the ground Jenson walks on. On the downside, they've suffered a nightmare 2005 season. They've got tobacco funding, which will have to be replaced eventually, and BAR are also yet to win a single race. That's Williams' strength. They've won 9 Constructors' Championships. They've had 4 podiums this season, which is more than BAR, and they run 2 on-site wind tunnels. On the downside, Williams currently have no engine deal for next year. They've had problems with this year's car design, and next year they won't have full manufacturer support. But does Jenson actually have a choice? Listen to Sir Frank Williams.
We do have an existing contract for Jenson with him for 06. We fully expect him to arrive at Williams at the due period of time.
Well, we've made it very clear we'd like Jenson to stay with us, and that's an open-ended offer. We'd like to have him till the end of his career. He's that good. We really do believe he can be world champion, so we're prepared to back him.
So nothing about the decision of BMW to buy Sauber, has that changed anything as regards Jenson's position?
There are no conditions regarding engine partner in the existing JB contract.
What do you think's changed within the team that's now made him want to stay here?
I think the biggest thing is Honda ownership of the team. Christmas last year, Honda bought just under half of our team. That really does give us fantastic security for the future. Honda are a company that's won the World Championship, I think, 11 times before. So, it's not an idle threat to say that this team can win the World Championship, and I think that's hugely attractive to Jenson.
So it's Williams who own Jenson's contract, but when you ask him who he wants to drive for, you'll get this response.
I'm not going to comment on that at the moment. It's something that I can't be talking about at the moment. I'm here to race this weekend and do the best job I can, and it's not a place to be talking about it.
So as far as you're concerned, Jenson will be driving for Williams next year?
That's affirmative, yes.
Is there anything that will change that? Has Jenson expressed a willingness not to come to Williams?
There is nothing that will change that.
Sir Frank Williams says Jenson Button is coming to them, no question about it. Tony Jardine, how do you see it?
Well, I think it goes back to the Contract Recognition Board, and I think he's right that is solid and watertight. That's a legacy of previous management, not the current management under Richard Goddard. But I'd also say, from Jenson's point of view, next year is a new ballpark. It's new V8 engines, new chassis, you start again. Williams have the facilities to do that. But of course, he is in a dilemma, and that's why he can't speak about anything at all.
Williams have a winning pedigree. BAR have never won a Grand Prix.
Yeah, it's true, but if Frank has to look at the economics, he's got to think that if he has to buy engines, maybe 12 or 15 million pounds and a reputed 8 million pounds a year for this man, Jenson Button, and his salary, could he afford it in the scheme of things? He may be able to.
The brolly up over Jenson Button, starting on the front row. Can he get back onto the Hockenheim podium? Last year, he flew from 13th on the grid to runner-up in the race. It was the drive of his life. An action replay would be ideal. it is overcast. There is drizzle in the air. The crowd, 110,000. The start of the German Grand Prix is just over 15 minutes away. Looking back 5 years, Rubens Barrichello won the first race of his career right here. Bit of a contrast today. He's back 15th on the grid. Here's Barrichello with Louise Goodman.
Well, Rubens Barrichello starting this race 15th on the grid, but you started 18th here in 2000 and still went on to win. So it can be done, but it's going to take a bit of luck, isn't it?
Well, it's going to take a little luck, some safety cars, and somebody pop into the racetrack to help myself. I mean, nowadays we have to acknowledge that the teams as McLaren and Renault, they're going very fast. Everybody knows that I'm on different strategy than Michael in terms of tires, in terms of everything. So it's just I have to see what I can get on. I mean, to be honest, today I don't hope for rain because my tire shouldn't work on the rain. Apart from that, just pray and drive.
That's unusual for you because you normally love it and do really well when it's a bit wet, don't you?
Yeah, but if it's just this kind of a weather, which is not wetty enough, if the rain comes down, then it's okay. I just have the proper tires. But to race with the grooves on the wet, then it won't be a fantastic.
Is that the same kind of problem for everybody? How difficult is it for the drivers when it's just damp as opposed to absolutely pouring down?
Well, the damp condition, I mean, it could touch a white line and go off, so you have to pay attention to that. The condition of the tire itself, if it's grainy or so on a damp condition, it's very, very difficult. That's okay, that's quite attractive. The problem is having the tire that I have right now.
Thanks, Rubens.
Looks though it is going to be damp for the Ferraris and everybody else. Let's go to the very front of the grid. Of course, Jenson Button is there, and so is Martin Brundle.
Welcome to the grid. We're looking and focusing down on the green wall there that Kimi Räikkönen has visited twice here in the last 2 years. Well, the Iceman is in the deep freeze somewhere, I'd imagine, getting ready for the start of the race. He doesn't normally want to talk to us, but I'll give it a try as he's on pole. Any chance of a Kimi? No, not today. One word. You sure? Okay. Well, he is definitely in the deep freeze, isn't he? Let's go and see if we can find somebody a tad more chatty down here on the front row of the grid in Jenson Button. And we are going to have to just trespass a little bit on the space here. Jenson, quick word. Well, you're getting pretty good at this, aren't you?
The qualifying bit, yeah, we just got to sort the race out.
Oh, yeah, well, you started 13th last year, finished second. You're starting second this year. You should be first at least, maybe much better.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't think it quite works like that, but I'm looking forward to it. It should be a good race. I mean, the problem is the McLarens and the Renaults, we haven't caught them overnight, so it's still going to be a pretty tough race, but it should be good. It'll be interesting to see where we end up.
Now, you're on the inside, which can be a bit of a problem here, but I noticed the GP2's got away fine this one. There's plenty of rubber down as well, isn't it? Are you concerned about that?
Not with being on the inside, but just having a McLaren in front and two Renaults behind me. That's normally the bigger issue because for some reason the McLarens and the Renaults are very good off the line, so hopefully we won't struggle too much and keep the Renaults behind us, but that'll be a tough one.
What would you be satisfied with today?
I think you'd have to say fourth would be a good position for us. I mean, it doesn't sound good, fourth, but when you've got two Renaults that are very strong and you've got Kimi starting alongside me on pole position, we're not going to be capable of too much more. And there's Juan Pablo coming through from the back as well.
Anything you want to ask me? I'm fed up always having to think of the questions.
Yeah, nice to see you pulled your trousers down.
Be careful, you look like an ice cream man in that suit. I'll see you later, good luck. Right, let's see if we can find one of the Renault drivers that Jenson was talking about. I meant, Jeffrey, what's the weather forecast according to BAR in a line?
There's still a risk, isn't there?
A good risk?
Towards the end, I think, yes.
OK, well, that should throw a nice double six and give us a thrill, let's hope. Where's Fernando Alonso? He's talking to Pat Simmons, and again, I hate doing this, but anyway, it's got to be done, hasn't it? Do you think he's ready for us, Patricia? Yeah, last minute discussions and tactics, weather forecast. Pat there looking. That sounds like Michael Schumacher might have just lifted a little finger or taken 2 steps or something like that. Any chance? Do I need to come back? Fernando, really sorry to interrupt you. So, are you happy to follow Kimi today, finish second? What's your mentality for the championship?
No, I'm happy if I can overtake him. But honestly, we know that the McLaren are extremely quick this weekend, so it will be difficult, but we try. I think there is 2 opportunities, a start and then around the pit stop, so we try anyway. If not, second will be the best place.
Would you take a risk to pass him if your car's faster?
Yes, I think so.
I like to hear that. Do you think yesterday he went off the track on his slowing down lap and you were next out? Do you think he did that on purpose to slow you down?
I don't know, only he knows, but normally in the in-laps I don't go off, so and in 12 laps he did a normal in-laps as well, so it's strange.
All right, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, thank you. Right, let's see if we can find somebody else. We've got a short time left, and let's just have a quick word. Michael Schumacher is now in the car, and I suspect he could be Leider, and where's Webber? There he is. Let's see if we can find Mark. Oh, right, we got like short. Mark, how's it going at the Ashes? I haven't seen.
Typical English weather. I think it's raining, isn't it?
Oh, just on time then. Is that going to happen today?
Yeah, it's not too bad. You've got a good South African batsman, Peterson. He's getting some runs for you. So, no, I think it's a great series, and I hope the Aussies, of course, can come through.
Yeah, all right, your mate Lance Armstrong, he should have done well today as well.
Yeah, he's just going to pedal into the Champs-Élysées and get 7 tour, which would be great.
Chance to talk about the Grand Prix and the weather and the car.
I think the weather will be fine. I'm not sure we'll be getting Lash results, but we'll try and get a few points.
Lash results, excellent. I think I'll go back to you, Jim. Bye.
Thanks very much indeed, Martin. A brief glimpse of Juan Pablo Montoya there. Super crowd in that Mercedes grandstand. The stadium section always gives a terrific climax to every lap here at this Grand Prix. The Jordans behind the Minardis right at the back of the grid there, and Juan Pablo Montoya, well, Tony, he could make this race. Juan Pablo, he's got a magnificent car underneath him. He's down the back because of the mistake in qualifying. Can he do it? Can he crash through the field? I probably shouldn't say crash, should I?
Yeah, I mean, I think he could, and he is exciting. But Fernando Alonso there has made comments about Juan Pablo's driving, and has said he's not comfortable in close quarters with Juan Pablo. If Juan Pablo gets up alongside him, we could see a ding-dong battle there. He said he doesn't necessarily trust him. He said you tend to end up off on the grass when you're against Juan Pablo, unlike against Kimi Räikkönen, whose car you're looking at there. He's raced against him in karting. He said he trusts him, and they duel very closely, but he trusts him implicitly.
Just looking at the Renaults, they say they have a much better car in the race than they do in qualifying.
Well, that is the chilling prospect for the McLaren drivers, because they said, look, you know, really the car is not that good on the one-lap qualifying. Fernando Alonso lost it in the first corner. He was unsure about his braking into the second corner. He said, I'm just glad to be in third and on the clean side of the grid. But he said, the race is different. The car will be very strong.
Tony, thank you very much indeed. Here is the scenario then. Rain is in the air. David Coulthard, runner-up here 3 times. His Red Bull has to charge from outside the top 10. Silverstone winner Montoya, he is starting last. A few stretches from Trulli there. There's Klein, Sato still without a point. Germany's Heidfeld and the BMW Williams teammate Webber all ahead of DC. And so is Michael Schumacher, going for an unlikely and unprecedented 4th win here. Those Renaults side by side on the second row. Alonso so relaxed and chatty, and Fisichella eyeing a podium finish. Up front, the speechless Räikkönen, the odds-on favourite next to Jenson Button, saying the BAR can't win, but Button does extraordinary things here at Hockenheim. The German Grand Prix is speeding your way.